I was wearing long sleeves because I had all these track marks. She immediately was like, "What's wrong? Why don't you want to take your shirt off?" I think that was the most horrible moment of my life. It's never anyone's intention to get stuck in addiction. So how is it possible that we can get so wrapped up in these things and lose sight of everything else that's going on in our lives, regardless of the consequences? My nursing career ended due to my addiction to heroin and meth. And in this video, I want to tell the story of the final days of my nursing career. Also, at the end of this video, I'm going to ask you guys a little favor that involves someone in this story. So stay tuned for that. But real quick, if you're new here, I'm Brian, a once trauma ICU RN turned full-time heroin and meth addict. I was arrested for selling drugs, sentenced to 3 to 10 years in prison. I'm currently serving out the rest of that prison sentence on house arrest. This channel is just a way for me to share with you what I'm learning about finding meaning and balance, and I'm kind of rebuilding my life from scratch here on the channel and bringing you guys along with me. So welcome. In a previous video, I described my kind of overall story from when I kind of got started with drugs and then how it led into my nursing career and how my nursing career ended and then how I wound up in prison. In this video, I want to zoom in on the part right at the end of my time in the ICU. And I want to talk more about the personal things that were going on in my life and in the life of my family, and just illustrate how it all unfolded. This story is sad, it's traumatic, and not because of the things that happened to me, but because of what I put my family through, particularly the woman who was my wife. And I just want to kind of unpack my psychology the best I can going through that circumstance and how I just remained attached to these drugs despite everything else. My hope in telling this story is that it might be helpful to anyone who is struggling with addiction currently, or has struggled with addiction, or is struggling with someone in their life who is addicted and is having trouble making sense of the chaos. This story begins on New Year's Day of 2019, I believe it was, in an apartment in San Francisco. I'll just call her my wife. We're divorced now, but at the time it was my wife. I don't want to use her name because I just want to respect privacy. My wife and I were living in an apartment and working a 3-month nursing assignment. In the months and years prior to this, I had been struggling with addiction. And I'd been hiding it from my wife, and she had discovered it several times, and so I'd been putting her through that roller coaster and like the whole shebang. But at this time, when we were in this apartment in San Francisco, for the prior 3 months, I had been doing really well. I was off of everything except for the kratom, and I was planning on getting off the kratom as well. Now, I definitely wanted to be off the drugs myself. Like I said in the beginning, nobody wants to become an addict of any kind, particularly like a heroin and meth addict. But I think my primary motivation at the time, I didn't really even understand this at the time, was that I was trying to do it for her. This is something that I think a lot of addicts can really relate to. We don't want to be sick ourselves, but we feel so guilty for what we have done to the people around us that our instinct isn't to get better for us. The instinct is to get better for the people we love and the people around us because of what we put them through. So at the time, my primary motivation was really to be better for her. You know, I wanted to prove to her that I could be the guy that deserved her. Okay, so back to New Year's Day, and my wife receives a call that her mom had just ended her own life. This was obviously a horrifying, life-altering event, and it was traumatic. I don't even need to say that, obviously. Immediately following this, the decision was made that my wife would cancel her part of the contract and move back to Tahoe, where we were from, to be with her dad and sister, and I would remain in San Francisco to finish the contract because we had been hired as 2 nurses together. Our recruiter had hired us as 2 nurses, so I decided to stay to finish out at least my part of the contract. As horrified as I am by this now, what I did right after she left, that very night, I went down into town and got some heroin and brought it back to the apartment and used. Now, my decision to do that didn't have anything to do with what had just happened. Obviously, that's probably the worst thing I could have done, in that moment. But I think what was going on in my head relates kind of back to this thing that I was doing it for her. What had happened also that day is that she had left and that I was by myself. I think what happened was, in my head, the best that I can come up with now is that the thing that I was placing my motivation for change in had just left and wasn't going to be around for a while. So my addict relationship with myself, this broken relationship with myself that I had at the time, kicked back in and was like, this is an opportunity to get high. And of course, the plan, as it always is, was I'm just going to do this right now. This is always the plan with addicts. It's never, oh, I'm going to do this for a couple of weeks. The decision is always based on the moment that you're in. I was in a moment and I saw an opportunity. No one will ever know. I'll just do it this once. All of this crazy bullshit that we tell ourselves. It's my little thing. And then I, of course, did it again and again. A couple of days after this, I think it was literally the second or the third, I get a call from her that says she's just gotten back from a doctor's appointment with her dad, and he had just out of the blue been diagnosed with terminal pancreatic cancer and was given like 2 months to live. Now, to me, these weren't just like some in-laws that I saw on the holidays or something like that. These were people that I was close to. I loved them dearly. Her dad was like a second dad to me. So it wasn't like I was like emotionally removed from them. It was, they were my people too. But like for her, I can't even imagine what that was like. I can't even imagine. It's, I still can't like wrap my head around how hard that could have been for her. Well, I didn't really expect to get emotional sitting in front of the camera. But, okay. Regardless of this, I was like using, and I kept using, and I kept using. You would think that something like that would be jarring enough that I would have been like, whoa, I need to get my shit together right now because this is crazy. If there was ever a reason to get straight and just be able to show up and be there for someone, this is it, man. But when you're in this addiction, again, you're not planning on what's gonna happen. You're just in your moment. It's all about the moment you're in, just right now. I'll deal with this later. I just need to use right now. So I keep using, and I finish this contract, and I move back to Tahoe. And I think I kind of weaned myself back onto Kratom at that point. So we're back at our house in Tahoe together. Her dad lives down the street. She's obviously spending most of her days over there with him. And as the weeks go by, I decide that I should get a job locally, a nursing job locally. And so that's what I do. I apply for a nursing job, I get the job, and then I'm going through the onboarding process. And they do a urine test, of course, but this particular place also did a hair test. And I don't think I really came to terms with that until I was like right up against the time when I needed to go in and do it. So I decided to get some shampoo off the internet, some expensive that shampoo that's supposed to wash the drugs out of your hair. So before I went in, I did this whole, the whole process with the hair and the vinegar and all that. I don't know if any of you have ever done that, maybe too. But so I went into the test. I passed the P test. I took the hair test. And then a few days later, I get a call that I had failed the hair test. And the guy on the phone was like, what's up, man? What's going on with you? And I, at this point, was completely in denial about the situation I was in. At this point, I'd been off of this stuff again for a few weeks because I had been in San Francisco, and I just got back on the Kratom. And so I was like, I'm good. I'm over it now. That's my past. And I was like, how dare these people look back 3 months? What's it their business what I was doing 3 months ago? Just this crazy denial and responding with anger and frustration instead of like any kind of acceptance or self-reflection, really. So I'm just basically like, whatever, man. I make some excuse and I get off the phone. I don't even remember what I told my wife about this. I think I must have told her that I failed the hair test, but I obviously made up some other reason why I failed, like that I'd done some MDMA or something while I was down in San Francisco or something like that. So I'm like, whatever, I didn't get that job. I'll figure something else out. It wasn't long after that, maybe a week or two. I was shopping at the grocery store and I get a call from her saying, hey, this thing just came in the mail for you. And it says that you have been reported to the Board of Nursing for failing that drug test and that you're under investigation. Again, my reaction is just anger and frustration. How dare they? How could they do this? It's so unjust. It's so unfair. It's so da 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 da. I mean, now when I think of it, it's like, duh, thank God they did that, and duh, they were going to do that. What the letter basically said was that you are going to be investigated for this. The investigation could take several months, but during that time, you have an opportunity to attend our rehab program for, addicted medical staff. And if you complete the program, then we'll drop the investigation. I don't know why at the time I wasn't like, oh, hell yeah, like, let me get on that right now. There was like no way at the time in my head that I was going to do that. The other thing about this circumstance, though, was that while this investigation was going on, my license would be unaffected. So what I decided to do was get a different nursing job. I ended up getting a 3-month contract at a place out of town about halfway between where we were and San Francisco. As soon as I started going down there for these assignments, I started getting high again. What I would do is I would either leave early the day before my first shift and say, oh, I'm just gonna go down and sleep there and then so that I can wake up and just go to work. I would drive straight to San Francisco because it's the only place I knew where to get heroin at this time. And I would get heroin and meth, and I would drive back and then do it and then work my shifts and then go home after that. Or I would drive down, work my shifts, and then after my last shift, drive to San Francisco, which is like another hour and a half or something, get more stuff, and then head all the way the 4-hour drive or 3.5-hour drive or whatever it was, back home. And I did this every week, and I would always be late coming home, and she would always be like, what took you so long? Well, I was really tired and I just slept. When I was doing this, I wasn't staying in a place when I got down there. I just slept in my car, which was a Subaru Outback. Now again, I want to stress for all of you who are dealing with people who are addicts, getting addicted, as crazy as that sounds, is not the plan. Each time it's just, oh, I just want to do this right now. It's not like, oh, right now I'm in a situation where my nursing license is at stake and my wife's dad is about to die when her mom just took her life. Like, none of that computes. It's just, oh, I'm sitting in my car after work and I want to get high right now. That's the plan. And I'm alone and no one will find out. That's always the plan. This brings me right up to the final shifts of my time working as an ICU nurse. My wife's dad at this time was pretty close to the end. It was like any day now kind of thing. And I went down, did my routine, and was working in the hospital. And I think I remember on my very last day that I was working, I had a patient who died dramatically, like code blue, chest compressions, the whole 9 yards. It wasn't anything that had to do with me, thank God. But it was his time, and I remember sitting there and the whole family coming in and just their just sorrow over this event, and I was just like so beat down, and I was just like, this is crazy. I didn't realize that was going to be my last moment as an ICU nurse. As all this was happening, I didn't know, but my wife's dad, this man that I like loved dearly and admired so much, was dying. I think I was off work already when it happened, and while it was happening, I was doing heroin instead of driving home. I got back and it had happened and he was gone. I had a few days off at that point, like the 4 days between my shifts. I think it would have been much clearer to my wife that I had been doing drugs had she not been going through all of this, and her mind was so preoccupied on all of that stuff. But she hadn't recognized it yet. On the last day of those 4 days, right before I was going to leave to go to work, she asked me to try on this shirt. And I was wearing long sleeves because I had all these track marks. And I was reluctant to take my shirt off. And she immediately was like, "What's wrong? Why don't you want to take your shirt off?" And then, it was blown open. I took my shirt off and she could see everything. And I think that was the most horrible moment of my life. Not because of what had happened to me, not because she had discovered what I was doing, but just watching her break, watching just after everything that had happened, just watching her fall apart was horrible, man. It was just horrible. Oh, fuck. I didn't plan on crying, guys. God damn it. So anyway, it was just the most horrible moment. And she was like, "You can't go back to work." And I was like, "I have to go to work. I have to go to work." And I ended up leaving to go back down to work. I messed the story up a little bit. I realize now I did work those last 3 shifts. And it was the last shift when that patient died. And that was my last moment in the ICU as I described it. But I just got it mixed up. While I was gone working those last 3 shifts, my wife had reached out for help to other friends of mine. And she had told my friend Joel and another friend of mine. They all decided that I needed to go to rehab now. So my wife contacted a rehab, got everything set up. This was a rehab that was in the Bay Area, about a 5-hour drive away from where we lived. After I got off work that night, I was supposed to come straight home. And so Joel, who was working as well, he's in this incredible band, and he was playing a gig till late that night. And after his gig, he came over and just came to my house and waited for me to get home. But of course I was on heroin and I was taking forever, and I didn't end up getting home until early that morning, 6 a.m. So he waited up all night for me there. My wife had gone to another place. It was just him in the house. I didn't know this at the time. When I pulled up and I saw his car in the driveway, I was like, shit, this is an intervention. I don't know who's in there. This is crazy. And I turned around and I did more heroin or whatever, and I was considering not even going in there. But I ended up going in and opening the door, and he's there, and he's like, "Hey man, come on in." And I was like, "Who's here?" And he's like, "I'm just here by myself." And so him and the other friend that they contacted, my friend Conrad, he was on the phone because he lived in another state. Both of them sat there and were like, "This is the deal. You're going to rehab right now." And I'll have them on the channel at some point to talk about this, because I'm sure that their telling of it is a lot different than I remember it. But as far as I know from them, I was just so resistant. I was crazy. I was just absolutely out of my mind. I was not gonna do it. I have to go to work again. I already canceled another contract on my recruiter, blah, 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 just all this bullshit. And I just was not having it. And so Joel had to sit there with me for hours more just to get me to get in the car so that he could drive me the 5 hours down to this rehab. And he had to get back to play another gig that night. So he was still working and playing these gigs. So he's like, "I need to go, man. We gotta go." I finally got in the car and we both drove down there. He was so tired because he had been up all night and he knew he had to be up again. So I was like, "I'll drive for part of the time." And he was like, "I really don't want you to be driving, but whatever, I'm passing out right now." So I would drive, and he said I would be fine for a little while, and then I'd just be crazy, and then I'd be fine. And he was blown away because he hadn't, I had been spending time around him a little bit, but just small snippets of time. And this is the first time he had gotten a long period of time with me in a while. This is what he told me later, and he just said, "You were totally out of your mind. You were completely split personality. You'd be cool one second, we'd be talking about music and blah blah blah, and then the next minute you'd just be furious and raging." I kept stopping at gas stations and going in the bathrooms to use more before I got there, and he was just waiting for me and just "Dude, I know what you're doing in there." And I would be like, "No, I'm not. I'm just still trying to deny it, still trying to hide it, even at this point. And so he gets me there and he drops me off at rehab, and then he drives all the way back home to go play his gig again. what a friend, right? And that's pretty much where this chapter ends. I went to rehab. There's so much more, obviously, after that, but as far as the scope of this video goes, that about does it for the story. The purpose of me telling you that story, again, isn't just to tell you a tragic story. It's just to illustrate how depraved one can be when they are wrapped up in just an addictive mindset. And if you're involved with someone who is wrapped up in addiction and you are very close to them and you care about them, but they're just behaving like an insane person, I hope it might just be helpful to hear this perspective, because no matter how crazy it seems, like the things that they're doing and the decisions they're making and how selfish it seems, no matter how much it may seem like it, they are not deciding to make it like that. It's not their plan to be like that. In my experience, it again always came down to this moment to moment thing. I was always just trying to fix the moment that I was in. It's just incredible to me now how, regardless of the extreme horrible circumstances that were going on around me and with the people that I love the most, I was still capable of, when it came down to like my moments with myself, I could still choose that. And I think this goes back to what I was saying in the very beginning about doing things for other people instead of yourself. This is to like all the addicts out there. It's like no matter what's going on around you and no matter who is wanting you to get better, like it's not gonna work if you're doing it for other people. And again, it's like addicts are so afraid of being selfish because they already are so selfish. They already feel so selfish, and they already feel like a piece of shit, and they already feel like such a horrible person for doing this stuff. And we hate ourselves, and we just think that we need to make up for it to other people. But if you have that attitude, it's not the way to get out. You have to become selfish in a positive way to really take care of yourself. After I went to rehab and I was kind of like taken by my friends, I did well in rehab, and when I got out, I was really excited to show everybody how good I was doing, but I quickly relapsed. And then I'm in, doing this prison sentence thing. I hadn't gone because I wanted to take care of myself. I had gone to like prove something to other people or to be better for other people. If there was ever a time that doing it for someone else should have worked, it's in my situation when doing it for my wife should have worked. I don't think there's anything I can think of that would have been more of a reason for me to do it for somebody else. You have to turn inward, and you have to find good enough reasons to do it for yourself. And I promise you there are good enough reasons to do it for yourself. This is so cliche that you got to put on your own oxygen mask before you put on your kid's oxygen mask, because otherwise you're both going to be in trouble. It wasn't until I made that mental shift where I was like all alone and I was in prison and there was like nobody to try to take care of in my life except me. That's when I finally realized, that's when it finally clicked, and I was like, oh, it's just me here to take care of first. And you know what I've discovered now is that taking care of yourself, like really taking care of yourself, is the best part of life. It makes everything better. It makes everything full of purpose, and it makes this lovely life worth living for you and for everyone else around you that you love. All right, that's gonna do it for today. But remember in the beginning when I said I'd ask a little favor of you at the end that involved someone in this story? Well, the person in the story is Joel, the guy with the band, the guy that took me all to rehab and stuff. Well, his awesome band is full of a bunch of my best friends actually, and they are just getting started on YouTube. So the song of the week this week is called Whip World Crash by Lindsay and the Cheeks, and the link is in the description, and I really think you should click it because they're just getting started, and I would love for you to give them some love and head over there and say hi in the comments. Just check it out. I promise you that all it will take is 5 seconds of you listening to the lead singer Lindsay for you to be hooked. These guys are incredible. They deserve so much attention and love. Just subscribe and like. So that's the song of the week. I forgot the song of the week last week, but this week it's extra special. Click that link. Check it out, go give him some love, say hi to him for me, and I'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much.